Hello, welcome to Supporting Infants and Toddlers in Risky Play. It's nice to meet you. My name is Dr. Joanna Spots, and I have been an educator for over 20 years. I am a nature-based educator in Vermont, and I am currently a curriculum coach at a center that is working towards becoming more emergent and more nature-based. And that's kind of what I do there is I coach the teachers in doing those things. And my doctoral work focused on both nature-based learning and risky play. Today we're kind of going to talk about the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how of risky play with infants and toddlers. I hope that some of the slides and some of the things that we talk about will inspire you to create more risky play opportunities for your students and help you to talk about families and colleagues and administration and to talk about them with risky play and explain to them why it is so important for young students. We are going to start by reflecting on ourselves and how we feel about it when children in our supervision are taking risks in their play. So I'd like you to kind of assign yourself a number. If you are a 1, you stop all risky play as soon as you see it happening. If you are a number 2, you say a lot of be careful. You don't necessarily shut it down, but you're pretty tight on your expectations. And hopefully if you're here, that means you'd like to kind of learn how to be not so tight in your expectations. If you're thinking you're number 3, depending on the kids doing it and the activity, you're mostly okay with risky play. But there are some things that you're just, nope, not going to happen. And if you're a 4, you're like me, you're mostly okay with risky play. There are some things that you are just not okay with. And sometimes you let that not okay get in the way of kids exploring and taking part in risky play. And if you're number 5, you're like my co-teacher who is like, bring it on, the riskier the better. And she's always ready to start a campfire. So I'm going to just give you a moment to think about those things. And yes, you heard me right. I am a number 4. I am not okay with some risky play. And sometimes I let that get in the way, but I'm working on it. So I think that when I first started looking at risky play, I was a number 3. So in the few years since I've done this work for my dissertation, I've come a whole number, and I'm getting toward the riskier the better. But there's still definitely some things that I'm not comfortable with letting students do. So since this is a webinar about risky play with infants and toddlers, first we should look at who are infants and toddlers. And keep in mind that this is how the NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, the professional organization that is one of the organizations that kinds of set standards for and developmentally appropriate practice for young children. And they identify an infant as a child from birth to 15 months, a very wide breadth there. A toddler is a child who is 12 months to 36 months. So again, a wide breadth of ages. And I know every program has their own kind of system for moving children up through the different classrooms, right? When you move up to out of the infant room to the mobile infant room, or where you might move from the mobile infants to toddler classroom. So there are lots of different ways to figure that out. But this is kind of the generalization that we're talking about. And I also want you to keep in mind that risk is subjective. So what you might see as risky play might be fine with me. And like my co-teacher, what I see as is reckless or hazardous play, she might be fine with. So while our kids all try different things at different levels, teachers are comfortable with different things at different levels. Parents are comfortable with different things at different levels, right? There are things that I would let my child do that I would never let a kid do in my care, in my classroom. So there's lots of different things to think about when we think about risky play, but keep in mind that it's different for everybody. Alrighty, so let's look at what risky play is. Scholars have kind of come up with categories for risky play. And these kind of categories are kind of changing and evolving. But these categories are based on Sandsetter's categories and her seminal research, which is actually a part of her dissertation research. She looked at preschoolers, and they were in what was called in Scandinavia a nature-based program, and then in a more traditional-based program. And she studied their play, and she noticed that both classes took risks with their play, and the nature-based took more risks. But both kids played in these ways, and both kids played in these categories. And I think that this is kind of where people get the idea of nature-based and risky plays go together. And there's a great reason for the relationship, because outside is where all the best climbing trees are, right? So we can still apply these categories to infants and toddlers. Just because the original research was done in preschoolers doesn't mean that infants and toddlers don't play in the same ways. So one of the ways that they play is they play at great heights, which is climbing. And then, of course, the cousin to that, jumping down off heights. So here in the picture right here with the two smiley faces, they're on this, like they've climbed up on this like little climbing shelf, and you can see that this ramp here is actually a table, and we took two of the legs off to make a ramp. And these children are climbing on a stump run, which I think is a really fun way to differentiate some climbing. And these will definitely, I'll be referring to the stump run a couple of times in our webinar today, because I think it's a really great way to have a lot of different kinds of risky play. And then also playing at great speeds is a way to play risky. So this is that table from the last slide that's missing we took off two of its legs, and this young lady is climbing up the slide, so she's getting some climbing, and then she's sliding down, and she's saying wee every time. And here again is a great place to show how risk is subjective, because to you or I, it doesn't seem that fast, but to her it is, and she's really enjoying playing at that speed. And of course, swinging on your belly or on your bottom gives you a great idea of speed. And also playing with or near risky elements or tools. The literature calls these dangerous elements and dangerous tools, but I think calling things dangerous is a great way to get people to shut down risky play right away, to not allow it in any way, shape, or form. So I like to call it risky. And when we talk about risky elements, we're not just talking about my co-teacher's favorite, building a campfire, which I don't do with, and she doesn't really either do with anyone under the age of 3. So it's not something we're going to really talk about here in this one. But dangerous elements are here. We have water on the left, and rocks, which can be dangerous elements. Also, like playing in a boulder could be a dangerous element. And then on the right, we have a young person playing with sticks. And to me, a stick can be a tool, and it is a risky tool because you can get hurt with it. So there's lots of different ways to interpret risky elements and risky tools. Older students cutting with scissors, that's a risky tool. And then perhaps our youngest learners like this one the best, playing to hide or to get lost. Of course, we never actually let them get lost, but they like to think that they are, right? They kind of have this, if I can't see you, you can't see me mentality sometimes. And here we have a young person playing in a box. And from where I was standing and where her teachers were, we could hear her, and she was putting a doll to sleep, singing it a lovely lullaby. And here, this red right here, that is a student playing behind this root ball where he happened to see some ants crawling around. And I was counting children, and he kept saying, you can't get to the magic number because you can't see me. I'm back here. So even though he knew he was difficult to see, he wanted to make sure he wasn't actually lost. And then something that we need to think about, particularly with our youngest learners, is temperature and weather. So think about what they need to wear to be comfortable outside, and how that will affect them. If it's so cold that they need boots and snow pants and hats and gloves and mittens and a coat, it's going to be difficult for them to move. So icier conditions might be something that you need to consider when you talk about risky play. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is it raining too hard? All of these things that we need to consider. And I want to just remind us that young children regulate the temperature differently than adults and older children do. And often they can't tell us if they're uncomfortable, if they're hot, if they're cold, or if they're thirsty. So these are reasons why playing in extreme weather, extreme sounds funny to talk about it, but in this context, but is definitely something that can make play riskier. And if you happen to live in one of those areas of the world that doesn't really experience winter, well, I guess you're a lucky duck, because I think about this picture here and this picture here, and about what a struggle it is sometimes to get kids dressed to go outside. That's one of the biggest challenges that teachers in northern parts of the world face. So we've talked about all these categories, and sometimes you'll be seeing play and you'll be like, definitely risky, but what category does it fall into? Or this falls into more than one category. So I think we need to consider that although we have these categories of risky play, it's probably better to just kind of have a definition of what risky play is. So one, risky play is child-led. In all of the slides that we just looked at, and in this particular one, the risk can be, or the play can be introduced by an adult, but we're going to let the children choose whether or not they do it and how they go about it. So we introduced a ramp or a table without two legs as a ramp. The children decided how to do that. We have this shelf in a classroom, and this student chose to go up there. And we'll talk about this picture in a moment, because I bet there's some of you who are like me, like, why did she take a picture of a child climbing where they're not supposed to climb? So secondly, risky play is exciting, and at least for the kids. As Angela Hanscom is quoted, is noted for saying, children deserve the right to play in a way that makes adults gasp. So it's definitely exciting for them, but it might not be so much for us. And in fact, sometimes when kids come and they say, I'm bored. Of course, this is probably older too, and preschooler. I like to say, go make me want to stop, go make me want to, go give me a heart attack. Go make me gasp. Go make me rush over and wonder what you're doing. Go find something. And I know that sounds like it might be a little reckless, but the kids know what it means by now. And also, risky play pushes boundaries. And not just like the physical boundary of where I can go in a play space, or in this case, what I can climb but it also goes to being the boundary between being in control and being out of control. So how high is too high? How fast is too fast? How deep is this? Can I go into this water? Those kind of boundary pushes. And of course, it involves the possibility of physical injury. So in all of the slides before and in this one, there's a possibility of getting hurt. And that's the risk in risky play, right? So this particular kiddo has cleared the shelves first, after his teacher, myself, put everything back up on the shelf. It's toward the end of the day, and I happened to be talking with his mom about his day, talking about the fact that he might need more food because he's about 14 months old, 15 months old, and and he's starting to climb and be more active. And she goes, "Oh, like that?" And I turn around and yep, he had climbed up the shelf and is sitting on the top with the biggest "Look at me, Mom, I'm so proud of myself" look. So I said to his mom, I said, and this is one of the biggest struggles of being an educator is take a picture or get them down right away. Take a picture and get them down right away. So took a picture one because Mom wanted the picture, but also then we took him down and we showed him where he could climb. So risky play, I'm hoping that you get from seeing these slides, is really important, has a lot of benefits. And if you look here, gross motor skills is in this word cloud, the biggest part. But if you look at some of the others, and I'm realizing now some of these words are really small. I apologize. I suppose you could pause and make this bigger if you really want to take a better look at it. But so there's problem solving, flexible thinking, self-confidence, self-awareness, self-esteem, emotional regulation, resilience, empathy. So all of these benefits of risky play, while they are cited in the literature, these particular phrases are from different webinars I've done, different live webinars I've done, different professional developments I've done with programs, and in-person conference workshops. So all of these are given by teachers as the benefits of risky play. It's not just coming from scholars. So real life experience are showing all of these benefits. And when I look at them, yes, the gross motor skills is in there, and that's a great physical skill. But I'm seeing a lot of social emotional skills and a lot of cognitive skills. And my personal philosophy is that as an early childhood educator, my job is to help children develop and strengthen social, emotional, and cognitive skills. The skills of getting along with other people and the skills of applying themselves to task. So resilience, attention, flexible thinking. And if we can give children those while they're in our programs from birth to 5, when they go on to their quote unquote formal education in kindergarten, first grade and on, they'll be able to tackle those academic skills, and they're going to absorb much more of that, and they're going to have an easier time learning those things. And I think that's our job. So we can see that risky play, allowing for these things, supporting our infants and toddlers even, will help them gain these skills, and they can continue to build on these skills as they move up through programs. So if risky play is so beneficial and so great, why do we have to have webinars and professional development and scholars studying it? Well, I used to have 4 slides to explain what hindered infant and toddler risky play and preschool risky play. And then I was reading and I found this quote. And I feel like it is a great explanation of what hinders early childhood educators for allowing more risky play. And because some of you are probably like me and you like to listen to these webinars as almost like a podcast, I will read for you this quote. Accidents are sensationalized or even glamorized by the press. Indeed, our contemporary risk-averse society has almost a morbid fascination with reporting on, analyzing, and preventing accidents. Our modern risk society generates statistics and insurance policies to secure us against accidents. It is frequently not only a goal, but also the law that environments should be engineered to minimize risk. And as you can see by the citation here, this comes from a book about fashion. And it's kind of about and you can see in here, it's dangers of dress, passion, past and present. So it talks about things such as the triangle shirtwaist factory fire. It talks about dresses being dyed green with poisonous dye, about the radium girls, about hatters and their use of mercury. But even in a book about fashion, they talk about risk. And they talk about how society really tries to wrap everyone in cotton wool and keep them from accidents. And that's how prevalent this risk-averse society, this risk-averse thought is. And that's why we come up against it time and time again. Often teachers cite regulations to me as to why they have trouble with risky play, and families. And a director was talking to me about how all of the things that their insurance company says they can't do, and all of those kinds of things. And that's why we have such a hard time with risky play. And, that really does make sense, because no one wants anyone to get hurt. I mean, I think that's like what I say to students all the time, right? My number one job is to keep you safe. So how then can we overcome this and be more risk friendly and realize that not all risk is a bad risk, that there are good risks to take? Because we just saw in the previous slides all of the great things that can happen with risky play, particularly with our youngest learners. So to overcome those obstacles, first we need to have a flexible mindset. We also need to create appropriate environments, use scaffolding, and have ideas about clear developmental goals. Now, a flexible mindset is kind of a hard thing to describe sometimes, and it's something that I feel like is difficult to teach, particularly in adults, because in adults we're already kind of like, well, this is the way I do it. And there's really nothing wrong with that. But I think we need to think about, when we think about risky play, is that one, it's natural. It is not if children play in a risky manner, it's when they play in a risky manner, and whether or not we allow room for that. Because when we don't allow room for that, that's when children start doing rash behaviors and taking bigger risks that they're not ready for. Because we need to remember that children are very capable of taking risks, and they kind of have a sense of what they can handle and what they can't for the most part. So one thing that we need to consider with our flexible mindset is risks and hazards. And Rusty Keeler taught me this, and it really kind of changed my thinking about risky play. And it's really what kind of took me from kind of a 2.5, 3 to a 4. And that is that a hazard is something that a child does not see. And I really think I should add on to this, and can probably hurt them. So if a child is on that stump run and one of the stumps is not quite level, that's a hazard, because they don't see it. And if they step on it wrong, it could topple over and they could get hurt. So that's a hazard. The risk is a challenge that a child can see and chooses whether or not to undertake it. So the child who gets up on who sees the stump run and thinks, I want to climb up there and I want to run across the stumps or walk across the stumps, as some kids rather do. Right? So that's what they're choosing to undertake. That's the child-led part. The adults have set up this stump run, and they are choosing whether or not they're going to climb up on it or not, run across it, walk across it. I watched a youngster who was just new to that 2-room. So they were maybe 2 or 3 months into being 2. And she climbed up in the first one and jumped off, climbed up in the second one and jumped off, and then thought the third one felt too high and didn't go, and just kept doing 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So that was her challenge that she chose to undertake. And yes, by the end of her time in the 2-year-old room, she was, running across all of them with her peers. But she chose whether or not she was going to do that. So when we take away all of the risks, then the child doesn't know what they are capable of. They don't know how to figure out how to get out of things. They don't know how to figure out if this stump is actually too high or not. And so they can't figure out danger, right? If we never show kids what poison ivy is, they won't know how to stay away from it. So that's what we're getting at here with risks and hazards. And it's an important part of our flexible mindset, is being willing to look at a situation, decide if it's hazard or risk, mitigate the hazards when we can. And I'll tell you that that's like one of our big jobs is to like check the stumps and make sure they're level. And the children will see that and then they'll start doing it too. So this example of the being level, when we go out to the playground, we all do like a safety scan, right? And make sure everything looks good. And that's kind of one of the things we do is we check the stumps because stumps are natural. They decompose and a stump might be a little bit too wobbly. So maybe we'll put it over on its side and give it more surface area. And I have seen kids go up to the stumps and check to see if they're level. I've seen kids check at the bottom of the slide before they climb the ladder to go up or before they climb the slide to make sure there's nothing at the bottom, right? That they start to do that too, and it creates safety for all of us. Next, we're going to talk about the environment. And one thing about the hazards and risks, right? We said when we take away all of the risk. And often we do that by not having anything on a playground, right? We call our playground just a big open field. Or we change up what's available based on what the children want to do. And when we talk about environments, think about what we have available for infants in an infant space versus what we have available for preschoolers in a preschool space, right? It's completely different. Well, not completely different, but it's very different based on age. So that's kind of what we need to think about when we're offering risky play as well. We need to think about how children can interact with the things on the play space. And can they do something risky on here? Is it allowing them to have appropriate challenge to in our stump run? See, I told you we talk about the stump run a lot. The stump run, right? So the kiddo who is ready to just jump up there and run across versus the kid who climbs up one stump and jumps down and climbs up the next stump and comes down, right? So can they do things in different levels? Are there different various ways to challenge themselves? So they become comfortable running across the whole thing, and then I see kids who take like a giant step and try to like do not step on the middle stump, right? They go try to step from stump 1 to stump 3 to stump 5, right? So to do different kinds of challenge. And that when we offer those kinds of things, that's when we really see children really kind of come into their own as far as knowing what they can handle, testing those boundaries, but still being able to stay safe. And I should also say, part of an appropriate environment indeed is supervision. So making sure you're present, making sure you're engaging with children as they try these things. Even children who don't have much expressive language yet, often they have better receptive language than we give them credit for. So talk them through things. And we'll talk about that a little bit in scaffolding. So this risky play inventory is available in your resources that are attached to this presentation. And I hope you will at least download it. I like things that are printed and that are paper and that I can write on. So you're free to print it. And I'd also like you to share it with anyone that you feel could benefit from this inventory. And I developed it based on several different research articles and books. And those are listed there if you'd like to check them out. And the idea here is these things, these categories of things kind of help you get ideas of different ways to offer risky play. Different setups you might not think about that offer risky play that can help your students get all of these benefits that we've been talking about. And something that I want you to think about is like there are quite a few things on here that I think sometimes you look at them and it's a little overwhelming. Like there's so many things that offer risky play, which I think is great because the more opportunities there are, the better. And you don't have to offer all of them every day, but try to rotate through. And if you've had maybe some climbing things out for a while, maybe try some flopping things. It's amazing to me how many children just like to flop and down on a soft surface. Or if you don't really have a lot for children to grasp and hold on to, maybe you want to find some things to do that in. So make sure you're offering a variety of different things. Because remember, while those categories exist and we don't really use them all the time, we got to think that there are different categories of things that kids are going to want to try and do. And so we need to make sure we're offering those. And that kind of helps make our environments more accessible for children, and all children of all levels, not just children, not just preschoolers, but our infants and toddlers too. And think about that as you're thinking about what to offer, because you're not going to take a brand new 1-year-old to the forest and have them climb a tree, right? So, but maybe they want to pull up on a stump and try to climb it, and that sort of thing. So make sure you're thinking about those kinds of things while you're setting up your environment, or while you're considering putting out for young children. Alrighty. So we'll turn to the next petal, which is scaffolding. And I will say that scaffolding is something that early childhood educators do all of the time. And very often we don't even think about what we're doing when we're scaffolding things for young children, when we are helping them get to the next level, or even just stretching it, not even all the way to the next level, but just kind of stretching it into their growing edge a little bit. And these aren't exactly steps or how-tos of scaffolding, but I think that when we apply the kind of basic breakdown of what scaffolding is to risky play, it really ups our supervision game to 6, I guess. And it really does make children really think about what they're doing. And I know that our youngest learners don't really have a lot of metacognition yet to think about their thinking. But I think that starting these kinds of conversations when our children are just starting to get active and keeping them going all the way through preschool is going to really help them with risk taking. And I think not just in physical risk taking, but I think also in like asking children if they can play, or trying to write their name, or when they're older, working on an algebra problem for the very first time. So all of those kind of basics are built in early childhood. So scaffolding kind of, for lack of a better term, starts while we're observing risky play and while we're talking to children about their risky play. So I mentioned saying be careful before, and there's a big push in early childhood right now, I feel like, to stop saying to be careful, but to point out things that you notice or that children notice or should notice, pointing out a hazard, or talking about what plans are. And doing that really helps create a bond. And when we create bonds, and we observe and encourage our students, we say yes when we can and no when we have to. And of course, this does look different for infants and toddlers, but that kind of encouragement to do these risky things that that they might not always be able to do in every situation, it really helps them develop a bond, and it really feeds into Erickson's trust versus mistrust. And children are going to learn that adults can help them make decisions, that they can trust adults to take care of them. And in our brains and their brains, it helps to release oxytocin, and that helps create strong social bonds and reduces anxiety and enhances empathy and connection, which goes right back to our social emotional skills. So when we move into joint problem solving, it continues to aid trust and relationship building. When our students have trusting relationships with us, they're able to, instead of shutting down and saying, no, I can't do it, and just being done, they can work through a problem. They can work through the risk. They can work through their fear of failure or fear in general. So when we're right there with them and we say something like, I see you've climbed up onto this stump and now you are not sure how to get down. So I will be here, and instead of lifting them down, maybe you can say, I will put my arms out to catch you if you fall. But what I want you to do is take your foot and or just hold on to my arm for a little bit of balance while you step off this. Or I will hold your hands while you jump. And you can work through that risk together. And when we do that, the oxytocin will help us to regulate our emotions as adults and the kiddos' emotions. And when they work on a risk at an individual level with something they trust, they're better able to self-regulate. So they're better able to kind of stop and get out of that hindbrain, that fight or flight, and get into that problem-solving brain when they're regulated. They're able to see, oh, maybe this isn't too high. Maybe I can get down easily. Oh, Joanna is here. She's got her arms out. So I can take this risk to step down because she will catch me. And it's pretty amazing about a lot of that. One of those big hormones that does that is that oxytocin. And that's one of the reasons that co-regulation works so well, right? Because our brains, we've got that bond. So when we co-regulate with a kiddo, when we sit down next to them and take some deep breaths, that oxytocin is coming out because they've got that bond, right? It kind of comes all the way around. And then when we respond rather than we react. So we're kind of watching them climb up this stump. And we're kind of right there with our hands out. So if they do fall, they're on us. And we might say, oh, there's not enough room for your foot here. Try over here. And it's kind of funny because I feel like sometimes our youngest kiddos who don't have a lot of words yet, I'm talking to them when they're doing these kinds of things and I'm narrating what they're doing and I feel silly because I feel a little bit like I'm talking to myself. But remember, their receptive language is much more, and they're taking all of this in. And just the sound of your voice reassuring is really much better than you're reacting, right? You're, oh no, stop! Or, are you okay? Right? Haven't you ever had that kid that they trip, they fall, and the first thing they do is look at you, and then your reaction is what they respond to, and they either start crying or they're fine? Exactly. So if you've got that oxytocin flowing because you've got a good bond and you've been problem solving and you're regulated, you're going to much be able to respond rather than react. And Mariana Bressoni is the one who kind of coined the idea of the 17-second rule. And that is when a kiddo falls or trips or maybe like fails at a task, you maybe count in your head to 17 before you intervene. And that's to give them a second to self-regulate, give them a second to figure out if they're really hurt and what they need. And I'll tell you, 17 seconds feels like such a long time. And a lot of the time, in that 17 seconds, they will either get up and run off and do the next thing, or toddle off, I guess, depending on their age, or they will be in distress, right? So it's, you don't often have to wait all 17 seconds before you know what to do. So we've set up we've got a flexible mindset, and we know risk and hazard. We've set up an appropriate environment that allows for risks, and we've mitigated hazards. And we've scaffolded children through using the skills that they have to grow more skills, to get more competent, and to create bonds and have more oxytocin in their brains. So what about when families come to you and they are upset because you let them play with a stick? Because we all take pictures throughout the day, and sometimes I think we take a picture of something that's risky and it's they think it's hazardous, right? But it's just risky. What do we say to them? The first thing I usually try to say is that playing like this is natural. They're going to do it whether we are there supervising or not. And playing with sticks gives us great ways to develop our spatial awareness skills. And then I like to throw in our pre-writing skills, because a lot of parents, I feel like, either recognize that it's risky play and that we're keeping them safe, or they're just very anxious for academic skills. So talking about pre-writing skills kind of helps out with that. Parents come to me sometimes and they're like, oh, all they want to do is climb the stairs. All they want to do is climb up on the table. What should I do? I try to stop it, but one of those things. And I say, well, climbing is great because it tells you that they are ready to develop their muscles that they need for running and walking. And then I talk about how when they're climbing on things they shouldn't be climbing on in the classroom, we generally move them to a place where they should be where it's okay to climb. And talking to them about what they can offer, what families can offer that's a little bit safer for their children and less hazardous. But also, our core muscles and our back muscles really help us with learning to write, just like the sticks do, because that idea of sitting upright in a chair at a desk, we need our core and back muscles to do that. So climbing is great for that. And I had a mother complain because her child was not really complaining to me, but she's questioning what we were doing at school, because at home she was constantly like running by the couch and like peeking and booing out from the side, and it was making the mom nervous because her daughter was kind of trying to stay out of sight, right, and not being watched. And I talked to her about how that kind of play is natural, and it's showing you that your bond with her is a trusting relationship. And when she does it at school, she's also showing us that that's a trusting relationship, that she knows that we're going to not leave her alone, and that she can kind of hide and peekaboo and trust us to find her and know where she is. So those kinds of things really help parents know that like this is natural and normal, and this is what they're learning from it. So those are great ways to think about and like kind of frame it for your families. And while risky play is something that was started at the program I work at the top and brought down, sometimes even in nature-based play, especially with infants and toddlers, I feel like teachers really have to push up on the risky play. And so when we have colleagues or the leadership that's not quite where we are thinking about offering risk for young children, I often try to bring it to the standards. All of the states have early learning standards of some kind. And some countries even have like early learning standards that are applied to all the young children in the country, which is great. These are based on the Vermont early learning standards. And I realize that these letters and numbers probably look like gobbledygook. So for climbing, those are gross motor early learning standards. So it means it's the first element, the first goal for young toddlers, indicators 1 and 2, the second element of the third goal for young toddlers, the third indicator. Playing with sticks is approaches to learning, so kind of those cognitive skills, and gross motor. And the I there is for infants. And the hiding is, again, the approaches to learning and 3 social emotional goals. So you can use your own state's early learning standards and line them up with the activities you're doing. And you can show leadership and colleagues and even families too, that there is learning going on with this kind of play. It's not all about looking unsafe and looking hazardous. And also remind them that, you may not always be able to use the word scaffolding with families, but remember that you can say, I'm there with them. I'm talking through it with them. I'm spotting them. I've got my arms there, keeping them from hitting the ground if they fall, that sort of thing. I'm there talking them through their choices. I'm there to mitigate the hazards. That families particularly, but even leadership, knowing that the adults are there. That's not just checkout time. That can alleviate some of that anxiety too. So something that I get asked a lot is, what do I do when my alarm bells are going off, right? How do I respond rather than react? So I want to say, first off, if your alarm bells are ringing, congratulations, you are doing risky play. Remember what Angela Hanscom said, children have the right to play in a way that makes adults gasp. If your alarm bells are going off, if you're gasping, you're allowing children to play in risky play. So good for you. Granted, it doesn't make life the easiest, but hopefully some of the ideas and the things you learned about in this session will help it be easier. So remember, risks do not equal hazard, right? And you can trust children's abilities. You mitigate the hazards and they can choose the risk and they know what they're capable of, right? A brand new 2-year-old knows I can climb up on this stump and jump off and feel safe, but this other one here is too high and I'm not going to try it. I often suggest work with your colleagues. In Vermont, the max group size for infants is 8 with 2 teachers. So it's a 4-to-1 ratio. For the 2-year-old classroom, it's a 5-to-1 ratio. They often have 10 kiddos, so there's 2 teachers. So work with your colleagues to clarify what is okay and what do you expect and what the boundary is to the risky play. And also, so that you're both on the same page. And also think about too, like, remember I said before, I'm not okay with all risky play. Sometimes when kids are doing rough and tumble play, which doesn't happen as often with infants and young toddlers, so we really didn't touch on it, but I really don't care for that kind of play. But my co-teacher, the one who likes to build fires, she's got all these expectations and she's taught it all, how kids can do it. So I let her take care of it. And I'll even say to her, like, hey, since you're okay with this kind of play, I'm going to come over here and supervise this. And I'd like you to supervise that. And we call that the supervision swap. And we also have a code word for that because sometimes I don't want to like leave a group of children until another adult is there. So I might shout across the playground like, hey, I'd really like to visit the Eiffel Tower next year. And she knows Eiffel Tower means I need to switch. So she'll say, I'm on my way. And we'll switch. So that's a great way to, if, I cannot stop myself from reacting but I know that this type of play is okay. Maybe I just need a couple of minutes to take a deep breath. I can swap with my co-teacher and we can continue this kind of play and we can make sure our kids get the benefits. So finally, here are some things that I hope you will take away from this particular session. And I believe I said, say yes when you can and no when you have to. That is something that I think is a really important thing to consider. And consider your environment. Make sure there are opportunities for climbing and jumping down. Make sure there are places to balance. Make sure there's different kinds of terrain. Your kids can swing from things and grasp. I know swings in some places are a hot contentious item between regulations and licensors and programs. But see what you can do to figure that out. And then to reassure your families, we've designed our environment to provide appropriate opportunities for your kiddos. And we're right there offering support. That's where that scaffolding comes in. And we're here to keep the kids safe. And we're here to teach them how to be safe while they do these things. And I think that's really, that open communication, I think is a really big part about flexible mindset, right? Keeping your mindset flexible and the family's mindset flexible. So I hope that you will keep in touch. Here's my email, which I tried to keep simple for you. And then Spotlight ECE is my website. Spotlight and Early Learning is a consulting firm, and I am the founder of that. And on Spotlight ECE, you can learn more about my upcoming webinars. And I have a lot of free resources there as well for risky play, for infants and toddlers in risky play, for observation and documentation, and lots of other things as I kind of see a need in my own work as an early childhood educator and other places. I try to see what I can do to fill that need up. And then this QR code is for my monthly newsletter. As I'm saying this, I recognize that in April 2026, I did not send one out, and I apologize that to all of my subscribers, but I try to send out just one a month, and I try to kind of have some tips or tricks about risky play and some of the other things I see that the teachers that maybe I'm working with in my center are working on, that I can kind of try to impart some knowledge to others. And there's usually a free resource for that as well. So I hope you'll take a look at those things. And as we wrap up, here are some references for you if you'd like to check any of these out. The Hanscom is Balanced and Barefoot. It's a book, and it's a great read. And I found it very kind of really helping with my flexible mindset, and really gave me some things to talk about with families, especially, but with my colleagues as well. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen and watch this webinar. I got my start with risky play and nature-based education by attending the conference in 2019. And I really want to thank the Natural Start folks and the folks at the NAAEE for all their work in putting together this conference and the online sessions. And I'm just keeping the organization going. It's really been foundational to my learning, and I think to my work as an ECE, as an early childhood educator. So thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of your day.